first capstone presentation this afternoon is by Jonah, Stout, and this is his thesis sentence. Leisure and play are related and they are best practiced when understood together. Please welcome Jonah.
Have you ever met a person that is childlike? Someone who sees magic in simple things, who finds even a bland day to be filled with promise. Someone whose joy is infectious. Have you ever met a person like that and wanted some of that joy for yourself? A better question. Have you ever actually wanted to enjoy the things you were obligated to do? Doesn't that sound strange? If you loved what you did, if you saw some good or even some fun to it, you wouldn't be upset about having to do it anymore, would you? This is actually attainable. I believe it to be two concepts, leisure and play, that can help change one's perspective on everyday things. Leisure accounts for the soul, the spiritual enrichment of the person, and play for the mental and physical. Together, these two practices enrich human living, reforming the way people view the challenges of the world by putting them in tune with the way they were made, as well as the way God sees them. Leisure and play, two crucial functions of the human person, are related, and they are arguably best practiced when understood together. I will be describing leisure as Joseph Pieper defines it, then describing and connecting the traits of Dr. Stuart Brown's definition of play, and connecting it to leisure. What is leisure? Leisure is a philosophical concept, rooted in ancient Greek tradition and used in Catholic doctrine to help articulate the Church's teaching on the Sabbath and human nature. Today we will be using Joseph Pieper's definition, not only because of its grounding in the Church, but also because of his contemporary nature, as he wrote his work, Leisure, the Basis of Culture, after World War II. First, he defines leisure as a mental, spiritual disposition, not just its own kind of act, so it can permeate one's entire life, even work. Secondly, leisure is best embodied with an open mind and soul. Those that are quick to listen and slow to speak will be better off than those who are always anxious to contribute or control. Third, leisure does not exist for the sake of work, meaning that anyone that acts with a properly leisurely attitude does that thing for the inherent good that thing has, not just because it provides them some service or comfort. This means that work can be done leisurely. If one does some inherently good labor with openness of mind and does it primarily or largely for the good thing it is, rather than as a means to an end, they are doing their job in a leisurely manner, and in a way more fully. This is not to say that leisure will make work always pleasurable or always easy, but it can ground the work in something more substantial than financial or status-based gain. But why is this a problem? Leisure fights what Pieper describes as the view of the worker. This is not merely one who works, but one who has work as his highest ideal, who sees human value as dependent on output, on the things one can accomplish and produce, on income and status. While very few people ascribe to this view explicitly, it can subtly become the way people think without one's realizing, due to cultural pressure and economic structures. This thinking is antithetical to human nature, as we are made for communion with God, which is not a communion that is work-based. Leisure combats this mentality by reminding the person how doing is not the highest good of the person. Finally, leisure is not just helpful to human flourishing. Because it is fundamentally a person accepting reality by means of creation and their own nature, it is a crucial part of virtue, which is ultimately an acceptance of one's own nature and the will of God. A person cannot be fully virtuous without a leisurely disposition towards themselves and their external circumstances. What is a good example of an activity done with a leisurely mindset? Imagine you are a person that loves to craft tools. Say, for example, a knife. You see how the making of tools from God's creation can be enriching. You are open to the different things it can teach you about yourself, God, and his creation. This understanding fuels your practice of knife making, regardless of whether it's a side hobby, a small business, or even your main job. You are crafting knives in a leisurely manner. Next, let us describe the qualities of play as defined for us by Dr. Stuart Brown. What is play? Play is a biological phenomenon universal to animals and instinctual to them. The way play manifests is dependent on the person, although the symptoms of play stay the same. Brown says that play is apparently purposeless, meaning that to productivity-minded people, it is useless. It doesn't pay for anything and is not efficient in and of itself. Play is inherently attractive, which is just another word to say that it's fun. It involves freedom from time and a diminished sense of self, due to the person's full investment in the thing that they are doing. It is improvisatory, meaning it requires a person to innovate and have new thoughts. Finally, the person who truly wants to play again later, because of the experience had in play. The person who truly plays wants to play again later, because of the experience had in play. Brown writes, "These properties are what make play, for me, the essence of freedom. Those things that most tie you down or constrain you, the need to be practical, to follow established rules, to please others, to make good use of time, all wrapped up in a self-conscious guilt, are eliminated. Plays its own reward, its own reason for being," end quote. Play is necessary for human flourishing because it is built into our very biology as a need and developmental tool. Play is a biological drive, like the drive for food, sleep, and procreation, and this drive reflects a need. Humans have evolved to have an especially long period of neural development during adolescence in which play is the most beneficial. This is because of the use of our brains is the largest cause for our widespread dominance of the planet and long-term survival as a species. Every child's brain, in the period of adolescence, expects a large amount of formation and development, especially through play. Whenever they are deprived of this need, it can have drastic consequences. Case in point, in Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, he describes the contrast between the phone-based childhood and the play-based childhood, emphasizing that Gen Z, the first children to know a phone-based childhood, have suffered a spike in depression, anxiety, and self-harm compared to older generations. Play is completely and utterly crucial and cannot be ignored. What is a good example of play? Imagine that you hear an amazing song and are curious about how music works. You might pick up a guitar and just mess around, look up some YouTube videos, or even take lessons. Whatever environment you are learning in, you don't feel pressured to achieve a certain goal, meet a certain deadline, or learn a certain style. Any desire to improve in those areas comes from within and is encouraging rather than anxiety-inducing. The practice of guitar is sometimes difficult, sometimes even boring, but when you really enjoy it and are doing it for the sake of itself, you are playing. Now, how are play and leisure connected? Like leisure, play is done for its own sake, not for some other purpose. It must be done for the good of itself. It can even be a person's job and actually provide some benefit. But the thing that makes it good in itself is that it would still be done even if it paid nothing. Play is inherently fun, which is not equal to, but can be likened to the good seen in things done from a leisurely perspective, which is often accompanied with a virtuous joy. In fact, in a perfect world, virtuous joy and pleasurable fun would go hand in hand. But our fallen nature makes it so that we want what is not good for us. Play being improvisatory is similar to leisure's quality of improving prudence because of the person's openness of heart. In fact, the low-risk environment that play often provides can be a sort of training of decision-making. In play, one has to make decisions about how the game, story, or piece of art is going to look moving forward, and the result can teach them about what they prefer to see happen. This idea can inform the training of prudence. Although, with prudence, there is a right and wrong that is objective. Whereas with play, the fun is in the fact that the choices you make are more or less subjective. Lastly, the presence in play of a desire to continue later can relate back to leisure being virtuous, and therefore in its natural state, a source of recurring joy. Those that live the leisurely life come to love it, and often strive to adopt its mindset constantly. But why is this important? What does a person have to gain from seeing these two as related? As human beings, we are a body-soul union. It is important to take care both of our bodies and souls to live a good life. Leisure and play being connected suggests that one can view them as partner processes, with leisure enriching the soul and play enriching the body and mind. By seeing these two practices as two sides of the same coin, we can then conclude that by cultivating one, the other will often be cultivated. Those that are leisurely are often playful, and those that are free to play around often see the world in the light of leisure. Now, as for what to do with this information, become like a child again. See the world the way God sees it, an opportunity for joy, for charity. Be positive, complain less. You will feel extremely free. Don't waste your time in school or at work by treating it like a thing to be done. Try with your whole self to receive what life has to give you, to love the world you live in. I can't say this any more emphatically. Your life will be so much better if you try to be happy, if you try not to give up and try to care. But possibly the most attractive part of the relationship between leisure and play is that it ultimately connects a person's desires and needs when they incorporate them properly, and in that way become saints. St. Augustine, a father of the church, said, "Love God and do whatever you please, for the soul trained in love to God will do nothing to offend the one who is beloved." So I will ask you now, what do you find interesting? What do you find yourself moved by? Do you like to research diseases and conditions like cancer and diabetes, engage in the creative process, or even find a sort of joy in studying mathematics? Is there any form of art, spectacle, or of nature, or even practical hobby that gives you a sense of purpose? Is there something in your life that brings you lasting fulfillment as well as entertains and enriches you? What do you love? Thank you.
Begin with faculty questions, please.
Mr. Anson.
Thank you for your presentation. I noticed in Dr. Stuart Brown's definition of play that you were discussing that he describes the suspension of a sense of time. And I'm curious what it is about, say, maybe losing track of time while you're playing that's so fundamental to actually being in a state of play.
Thank you for your question. Something about the experience you have in play where you're kind of so invested in the thing that you're doing. It's almost like a low risk version of it being a life or death situation, in which like this is my whole life right now. Like I am doing this puzzle. I don't know. I'm playing this game, and it's like you're so invested in it that you kind of forget what's going on around you. And part of that is your kind of your perception of time is the phrase. So part of you being so invested in the thing that you're doing causes you to lose your sense of time. So you might be playing a fun game with your friends, and you kind of you pass 3 hours and oh gosh, it's 2 a.m. Whoa. Thank you. Ms. Pagano.
Jonah, thank you so much. Pope Benedict once said that the liturgy is a kind of sacred play. And I'm wondering if you could expound upon that statement. Does the liturgy, in fact, could it be categorized under play, and therefore is it a kind of leisure that we enter into? Is that the case, and if so, how?
Yeah, so I for sure think it's a form of leisure because, as I said before, part of the use of the word leisure in the church is to describe the Sabbath. So one of the things that I use in my paper is this quote about how the reason that we have the Sabbath is because human beings need a balance of work and rest in order to be full, in order to be fully human. So it's definitely leisure because it is the kind of thing that can be received openly. It can be received. You have a certain mental disposition going into, say, the mass. I'm not quite sure about whether I would say that it's a form of play itself, because there's a sort of way you have to hold yourself in a mass that is kind of serious and reverent, that I don't know if that fully is compatible with play, but I'm not too certain about that.
Thank you.
Ms. Argument.
Thank you, Jonah. I'm wondering, given your definition of play as engaging with mental and or physical, how physical play has to be and where video games relate to your definition of play.
How physical play has to be?
Yeah, to be considered play. Like in a video game,
Oh.
you hold a controller, but you're not engaging with the physical world outside of that. So I'm curious as to how video games fit into your definition of play.
Thank you for your question. So while I say it is a mental and physical kind of thing, I don't think it has to be necessarily both. It can be kind of a purely mental engagement. It is, of course, physical in the sense that you're using your body. Like, you can't play kind of just by doing nothing. But yeah, in terms of like physical activity, although it's extremely important to have a balance, like in terms of the process of play, I would say it's extremely healthy for a person to have a balance of like physical and mental play and things that are in the middle. It doesn't necessarily have to be. So I would say that video games in particular can be a form of play as Brown defines it. Of course, one should be cautious with that because the more you get to, I would say you can't call addiction a form of play. So if you're addicted to video games, it's actually less playful. Mr. Bergen.
Thank you for your presentation. I was wondering what you would think about someone who, for example, plays the guitar with the main reason of like reducing his anxiety. It's almost like a medical reason for it. If that's like the main reason, is that a form of leisure, would you say?
Thank you for your question. I mean, if it was solely for that purpose, I don't know if it would fall into the definition of play. But if I had to imagine most people that struggle with anxiety and turn to music as a form of relieving it or of subduing it a little bit, typically see some sort of inherent good in it. They're like, music is good, not because it is good, but it is good in and of itself. So I wouldn't imagine there'd be many situations like that where somebody is using music only as a way of kind of calming their anxiety and yet doesn't see anything furtherly good about it. Yeah. Mr. Cortez.
Thanks, Jonah. I actually have two questions. So my first question is, what are your favorite ways to play?
Well, playing music is one of them. I love to learn different instruments, study different genres, kind of go off and do my own thing. I've always loved to kind of teach myself those things. Sometimes, a little bit less commonly, but I love to learn languages, study languages that I hear other people speaking around me, or studying for a trip like the Italy trip. Mostly those two, but there are a number of other things that I'll go in and out of, small hobbies.
Okay, great. My second question is, so I think it's easy for kids to play, and it becomes more challenging the older we get. So I'm wondering if you have any like play mentors or even sort of like fictional characters that you could look to as good examples of maybe adults who still are in touch with their sense of play.
I have 3 different I would say 3 different kinds. So there's one from like my personal life, one that I knew, which is Brother Gabriel. I just always found him to be a generally playful person. Maybe we didn't always enjoy the same things, but he was just always like joyful. For a religious example specifically, I find Father Gregory Maria Pine to be a wonderful example of this. The way he talks and converses with people is so free, and he uses his intellect in such an accessible way. And then a secular example, my favorite musician currently, Jacob Collier. He's a British musician. He will make music of any genre. He'll mix genres together. He'll do all kinds of weird stuff. And that reflects in his speaking. When he's in interviews, he'll always speak about it like, I was just kind of playing around. I discovered this thing, I threw these things together, and it was a lot of fun. So those are 3 examples I would say.
Great, thank you, Jonah.
Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Jonah, for your presentation. What role does make-believe have in play and in connecting leisure and play?
So the role that make-believe has in play specifically, I mean, a lot of the things that humans have invented to play with, a lot of the toys that we have, are things that require a bit of suspension of disbelief. Like, you could say if you're playfully watching a show, or if you're playing some sort of pretend game with your friends, like you have to kind of enter into the world of the thing that you're experiencing. You're not actually in your backyard, you're in Neverland. In terms of leisure and play, I would say probably most prominently in great literature. When you're experiencing things in like the great books, in just well-written literature, you have to suspend disbelief, and that can be both a leisurely process and a playful one. Dr. Brumfield.
Thank you, John. I have 2 short questions. One is, as you no doubt know, for the Greeks, skole was the word for leisure, and that's the word we get school from. Can you reflect on kind of maybe any turning points in your academic career where school became more leisurely for you and not just laborious?
So that has I wouldn't say there were any like distinct turning points. It's always been kind of an up and down struggle. There would be some days where I think I prepared myself more to receive what I've been given, and there are some days where I wasn't really feeling up to it. But in general, it required a lot of kind of, like, I had to go into it saying, I'm going to receive what they have to give me. I'm going to try and let this piece of art, this thing, be what it is before I judge it. That was the main thing that kind of caused me to be able to do that in the instances in which I did.
And then the second one's about play. Group play requires rules. It's really hard to play pickup basketball if no one's following the rules. What role might rules have in play that also might help us to think about human flourishing more broadly speaking?
Yes, so Dr. Stuart Brown, in particular, he spoke about rules. It's part of the low-risk environment is that there are supposed to be rules, but in the specific instance of play, they have to be rules that can be mended and they can be shifted in order to keep the fun going. So you might have rules to basketball, but if nobody agrees that, say, this foul was fair, then nobody's going to keep playing. And that's like, we will be able to change the rules to kind of keep the play going. That's mainly, I would say, the role that rules have in play.
Thank you.
What questions do we have from the seniors?
Zachary.
Thanks, John, for your presentation. So there are instances when I'm doing long periods of work and I take a break in between, and usually I have 2 intentions. I have an intention of playing, and I have an intention of recovering so I can work better the next time. So does that second intention of recovering for work, it seems kind of utilitarian to me. Does that take away from the play that I'm doing in this break?
Thank you for your question. It absolutely can, and I think that was one of the main concerns my presentation was touching on, is to although it is possible to do leisurely things, to play with an underlying purpose, or with some, like, it can't be the main purpose though. Like if you want something to be truly leisurely, it should be done for the good that it is, but it can, like, that can be a thing that you do as, like, you can do it for that purpose as well, as long as it's not the main purpose. All right? James.
Thank you for your presentation, Jonah. In your presentation, you mentioned how a relationship with God is not supposed to be work-based. I was wondering if you could elaborate more on how our disposition toward leisure and play, as outlined in your thesis, how is that needed, like, in a healthy relationship with God?
So, primarily because of, like, the definition points I gave, which is that it's a mental spiritual disposition, it's best embodied with an open mind and soul, and it's not done for the sake of work. Purely for those reasons, you could call a relationship with God itself a leisurely thing, because it is you have to have a disposition, you have to have a certain state of mind in the way that you relate to God. You should do it with an open mind and soul, because He's going to speak to you, and being able to receive that is what makes it a relationship. And then, it not being for the sake of work is, I think, the thing you're more asking about. Man has always been asked to work. I mean, in Genesis, God asked Adam to till the ground before they fell, but they also walked together in the garden. So it's never been that work was the one thing man was made for. So it can't be the primary focus. And that's what I mean when I say that it's not a work-based communion, is that it's not the primary focus of man, it's the work. It's part of it, but it's not the primary focus.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jonah.